A 7-year-old girl stood motionless in the heart of a packed carnival, entirely alone as waves of strangers surged past her. Her mother had always taught her a peculiar rule. If you ever get lost and cannot find a police officer, look for someone wearing motorcycle patches. Now, separated from her mom and surrounded by a sea of unfamiliar faces, she was about to find out if that advice still held true. Earlier that evening, the Fairhaven Boardwalk Carnival was in full swing. Music blared from the speakers of carnival rides. Children screamed joyfully from roller coasters, and the air was thick with the sweet scent of funnel cakes and fried food. Not the kind of place any parent wanted to lose sight of their child. And yet, that is exactly what had happened to Maria Taylor. For years, Maria had repeated one unusual rule to her daughter Emma. If you ever get lost, find a police officer. But if you cannot, look for someone wearing motorcycle patches. Emma had shared this rule in class once, and her teachers had been baffled. Most parents warned their children to avoid bikers, not approach them. But Maria had a reason. 12 years earlier, before Emma was even born, Maria had found herself broken down on Highway 17. 3 months pregnant, bruised, and running from a man who had nearly ended her life, she had no hope, no money, and a useless car. That is when a group of bikers came across her. They fixed her vehicle, gave her enough money for a motel, and made sure she reached safety. They asked for nothing in return. One female rider named Nora had noticed Maria's bruises and simply squeezed her hand, saying, "Whatever you're running from, you do not have to go back." Maria never forgot that night. Until then, she had been like most people in Fairhaven, crossing the street when bikers rode into town. Her own father used to say that those people meant nothing but trouble. But those strangers in leather had not just repaired her car. They had formed a shield around her, keeping her safe in case her ex came looking. That night changed her perspective, and later, her entire life. She finished nursing school, started working at the local VA clinic, and returned to Fairhaven to raise Emma. Though she never saw those bikers again, she called them her angels in leather, and she made sure her daughter would remember them too. Now Emma stood near the tilt-a-whirl ride, crushed cotton candy in one hand and rising panic in her chest. One moment, her mom had been right next to her. The next, a crowd of rowdy teens had rushed past, separating them like a flood. Emma had shouted for her mother until her voice was hoarse, but no one paid her any mind over the booming noise of the carnival. She had spotted a security guard once, but he vanished into the crowd before she could reach him. Everywhere she looked were unfamiliar faces, flashing lights, and strangers laughing, playing, eating. She had never felt so invisible. Then she remembered the group of bikers she had seen earlier. They had been gathered near a bar at the end of the boardwalk. Her mom had even nodded to them, while other parents pulled their kids close and whispered warnings. Emma had thought that was strange, but now, standing there scared and alone, it made sense. With a deep breath, Emma began pushing through the crowd, heading toward the Rusty Compass, the bar where the bikers had gathered. As she moved, carnival sounds faded into the background, replaced by the rumble of engines and the low buzz of rock music. Outside the bar stood a dozen men and women wearing patched leather vests. Their appearances were tough: tattoos, scars, road-worn faces. But one man stood out, tall, with a thick gray beard and deep smile lines around his eyes. He was speaking with a woman who had streaks of silver in her dark braid. Emma hesitated. The memory of her mother's rule clashed with the fear gripping her stomach. Should she really do this? Maybe she had misunderstood. Maybe she should just keep searching. But then she remembered how certain her mother had always sounded. Taking another breath, she stepped forward and tugged on the gray-bearded man's vest. "Excuse me," she said, barely above a whisper. He did not hear her. She tried again, louder this time. "Excuse me." He turned, and for a moment his expression was sharp, until he saw her. Instantly, concern replaced the gruffness. He knelt so that his large frame was eye level with her. "Hey there, little lady," he said gently. "You all right?" "I cannot find my mom," Emma said, tears starting to fall. "She told me if I ever got lost, to find someone with motorcycle patches." His eyebrows lifted, but he nodded like it made perfect sense. "Your mom sounds like a smart woman." "I'm Tom. What is your name?" "Emma Taylor. My mom's name is Maria Taylor. She has curly brown hair and a red jean jacket." Tom stood and let out a sharp whistle that sliced through the noise of the boardwalk. Instantly, every biker nearby turned his way. "Missing parent situation," he announced. "Little Emma here cannot find her mom." Maria Taylor, brown curls, red denim jacket. What happened next would remain etched in Emma's memory forever. Without a single question, the bikers sprang into action. The woman with the silver-streaked braid knelt beside Emma. "I'm Nora," she said. "I will stay here with you while everyone else finds your mom." "Okay," Emma nodded. Tom turned to the others like a general giving orders. "Chris, check the midway. Lena and Mike, search the food court. Tony, go check the Tilt-A-Whirl and Ferris wheel. Phones on Channel 3, look for Maria Taylor. Let's move." In minutes, the group had split and dispersed into the carnival, scanning every face and alley. Nora stayed with Emma on a nearby bench, offering quiet reassurance. "Your mom taught you to come to us?" Nora asked, clearly touched. Emma nodded. "She said you helped her once. A long time ago, before I was born." Nora exchanged a knowing glance with one of the others. Did she say how? "Number just that you made sure she was safe." "Well," Nora said, wrapping an arm gently around Emma, "we are really glad she remembered. Most people wouldn't have." While they waited, the remaining bikers at the Rusty Compass subtly formed a loose circle around the bench. One handed Emma a fresh scoop of strawberry ice cream to replace her ruined cotton candy. Two others stood near the entrance, keeping an eye on anyone approaching. They did not look threatening, just alert, protective. "Do not worry, kiddo," an older biker with a white beard said. "If your mom is anywhere on this boardwalk, we will find her." And they did. Meanwhile, Maria was in a panic. The moment she realized Emma was missing, she began searching every ride, every booth, calling out her daughter's name with growing desperation. Her heart pounded as her mind filled with every parent's worst nightmare. Her little girl lost in a crowd, scared, vulnerable. She had taught Emma what to do. She had made sure the lesson was unforgettable. Still, the idea of her daughter wandering alone among strangers sent a chill through her. She shoved aside the fear and pressed on. Eventually, she found a police officer talking casually with a carnival vendor. "My daughter is missing," Maria interrupted, her voice trembling. "She's 7. Brown curly hair, red shirt, jeans. We got separated near the funhouse." The officer, name tag reading Officer David Simmons, sighed and reached for his radio with all the urgency of someone asked to refill paperwork. "Name and description again?" Maria repeated herself, nearly shouting over the carnival noise. Simmons finally began to speak into his radio, but his tone lacked any real concern. "We'll put out an alert, ma'am," he said. "But honestly, she's probably just wandered off. Happens all the time at events like this." Before Maria could respond, a stir in the crowd caught her attention. A large man in a leather vest was moving quickly but deliberately through the people, heading straight toward her. "Excuse me," Maria said, leaving Officer Simmons behind. She moved quickly to intercept the man. "Are you Maria Taylor?" he asked as she approached. "Yes." Relief surged through her. "Have you seen Emma?" "She found us," the man replied. "Smart kid. Remembered what you taught her." "I'm Tom. She's safe. Nora's with her back at the Rusty Compass." Tom was already speaking into his radio, alerting the others that the mother had been found. As Maria followed him through the crowd, she caught a glimpse of the patch on his vest, a phoenix rising from a wrench. The exact same emblem she had seen through rain-streaked windows 12 years ago. "Thank you," she said, voice cracking. I cannot believe she remembered. "Good thing she did," Tom replied. "Most people teach their kids to stay far away from folks like us." "Most people do not know what I know," Maria said quietly. When they reached the Rusty Compass, Maria spotted Emma sitting with a woman who had silver streaks in her hair, happily finishing her ice cream. The moment Emma saw her mother, she jumped from the bench and ran. "Mom!" she cried, flinging herself into Maria's arms. Maria held her tight, emotion choking her voice. "You remembered what I told you. The motorcycle people helped me, just like you said they would," Emma mumbled against her shoulder. Around them, the bikers who had been searching now returned. The search was over. Maria looked up, taking in the faces of these men and women who had dropped everything for her child. "I cannot thank you enough," she said. "You did all this for someone you did not even know." "Not exactly strangers," Nora said, stepping closer, watching Maria carefully. "You said we helped you before." Maria studied her. Then it hit. Highway 17. Rain. She had been 3 months pregnant and running from the hospital bed her ex had left her in. They had fixed her car, given her money, shielded her. "You were the one who squeezed my hand," Maria said. "You told me I did not have to go back." "I never forgot that." "And now you are teaching your little girl to trust us too," Nora said, glancing at Emma with a small smile. "Not many would." "You changed my life that night," Maria said. "That's why I made sure Emma knew who to look for." By then, Officer Simmons had wandered over, eyeing the group with suspicion. "Ma'am," he called, "is everything all right here?" "Everything is fine," Maria replied. "These people found my daughter." "These people?" he repeated. "Yes," she said firmly. "They organized a search party and found my daughter in under 20 minutes. They were kind, efficient, and exactly who she needed." Simmons shifted uncomfortably, opened his mouth, as if to argue, then walked away. Tom chuckled. "Some things never change. Now how about we escort you ladies back to your car? Getting late for the little one." Maria nodded gratefully. As they made their way through the boardwalk, the crowd watched. A mother and child flanked by a ring of bikers made a striking picture. Some people pulled their kids closer. Others just stared. But a few smiled quietly, understanding something deeper. Among the onlookers was Harold Baxter, who owned Baxter's Cafe on Main Street. He had always viewed bikers as trouble, warning his staff to watch the register whenever they walked in. But the sight before him made him pause. He did not see thugs. He saw protectors. When one of the bikers caught his eye, he expected a glare. Instead, the man gave a courteous nod. Angels in leather, Harold thought to himself. And for the first time, he almost believed it. By the next morning, word had already spread through Fairhaven. The story of how a group of bikers had come together to find a lost child traveled from one neighbor to another, gaining new details with every retelling. That Saturday, Maria took Emma to Baxter's Cafe for their usual weekend breakfast. They had just settled into a booth when the bell above the door jingled. In walked Tom, Nora, and two other bikers. The entire diner fell silent. Baxter's was a local institution, always busy, always familiar. Everyone knew everyone else, and everyone noticed when people in leather vests stepped inside. The bikers hesitated just inside the doorway, sensing the tension. Maria waved them over. Tom, Nora, come join us. That small invitation broke the stillness. The four bikers made their way to the booth. Tom slid in next to Emma, who immediately grinned and greeted him. Just wanted to check on the little lady, Tom said, his tone light. We're doing great, Maria replied. Thanks to all of you. Harold Baxter approached their table, coffee pot in hand. He paused, then filled their mugs without a word. Heard what you folks did last night, he said, voice gruff. Found that little girl. Just did what needed doing? Nora answered simply. Not everyone would have, Baxter replied, setting the pot down. Most would have kept walking. Breakfast is on the house today. At the counter, Officer Simmons looked up from his coffee, frowning. Careful, Harold. Next thing you know, you'll have motorcycles lining the street and scaring off your regulars. Seems to me, Baxter replied loudly, these folks did a better job finding a lost child than some others I could mention. Simmons flushed, set a few bills on the counter, and left. Over breakfast, Maria shared more of her story, how the bikers had helped her 12 years ago, how their kindness had given her the strength to rebuild her life, go back to school, and return to Fairhaven to raise Emma. I work at the VA clinic now, she said. Probably treated some of your members without even knowing it. Small world, Tom replied. That's actually why we came through town yesterday, Nora added. Annual ride to raise funds for PTSD programs. We're headed to Charleston next weekend. About 50 bikes altogether. 50? Baxter asked, pouring more coffee. Veterans from all over? Tom nodded. Last year we raised almost 30,000. Baxter whistled, clearly impressed. This was not the image he had carried for years. Not even close. By the time the plates were cleared, other diners had gathered near their booth, asking questions, offering thanks, sharing how they had heard the story. The way the bikers had coordinated, how fast they acted, people were astonished. Could have been my granddaughter, an elderly woman said to Nora. She's always wandering off. If she ever does, ma'am, Nora said, smiling gently, tell her to look for the patches. We take care of kids. 3 weeks later, Fairhaven started to look a little different. The Baxter's Cafe sign had been freshly painted. Beneath it, in smaller letters, it now read, All Welcome. The parking lot had been updated with dedicated motorcycle spots. Where once people crossed the street to avoid patched vests, they now nodded or even said hello. And it was more than just friendly breakfasts. When old Mrs. Whitaker's roof began to leak, a group of bikers showed up with tools and supplies and fixed it without asking for a thing. When the elementary school asked for volunteers for a fundraiser, 6 riders turned up to help, flipping burgers and setting up tents. Slowly, but surely, Fairhaven's perception of bikers was changing. Emma now had a special gift from Nora, a small denim vest with a patch that read, Protected by the Road Family. She wore it proudly to Baxter's every weekend, often joining Tom and the others for breakfast. She called them her other family. One Saturday, as Emma chattered about motorcycles, Harold Baxter slid into the booth beside Maria. Never thought I'd see the day, he said, nodding toward the mix of bikers and locals. Used to get nervous seeing those vests. People are often more than they seem, Maria replied. Sometimes it just takes one moment to see it, like a little girl getting lost at a carnival. Funny how life works, Baxter said. Emma's school is having career day next month, Maria said thoughtfully. They're looking for people with unusual jobs. You're thinking what I think you're thinking, Baxter asked. Maria smiled. I think kids might benefit from meeting the real people behind the leather vests, don't you? A month after the carnival, Career Day arrived at Fairhaven Elementary. In a classroom full of wide-eyed second graders, Tom stood tall in his leather vest covered with patches. But today, those patches did not look intimidating. They looked like stories. Tom spoke gently as he pointed to each patch, explaining its meaning. One boy raised his hand and asked, Are bikers bad guys? Tom knelt down so he could look the child in the eye. We are just regular people who love motorcycles, he said. And whenever we see someone who needs help, especially a kid, we always stop. That is our most important rule. In the back of the room, Maria watched with tears in her eyes as Emma stood proudly next to Tom. This is my friend Tom, Emma said. He has patches and promises, and he keeps both. Outside the classroom, sunlight glinted off a row of parked motorcycles in front of the school. To many passing by, they still looked imposing. But to one little girl with wild curls and a mother who remembered a rainy night 12 years ago, they meant something entirely different. They were not strangers, not threats. They were unexpected guardians who had become family, not once, but twice. Because sometimes the scariest looking angels do not have wings. Sometimes they wear leather. And though no one said it aloud, everyone in that school knew the truth. That night at the carnival, a little girl had not only found her mother, she had found her second family. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Do not forget to check out the next video now, playing on your screen. See you in the next one. The moment my ex looked the judge in the eye and said, She's unstable. She lies to our daughter. I want full custody. I felt the air leave my lungs. He said it so calmly, like it was an undeniable fact. And the judge? She looked like she believed him. I wanted to speak, scream, explain anything, but nothing came out. I sat frozen in that hard wooden chair, heart racing, while the man who once said he loved me now painted me as a danger to the one person I loved more than anything in this world, our daughter. Chloe sat behind me, clutching my mom's hand. She was only 7, but she saw everything. Her big brown eyes locked onto mine, reading me like only she could. She knew. I was drowning, and nobody was reaching for me. Ryan, my ex-husband, wore his navy blue suit like armor, calm, rehearsed, polished. The same man who once shouted over the wrong takeout order now looked like the perfect parent. He was always charming. That was the danger. When the judge asked if I had a response, I opened my mouth, but only managed a trembling breath. My lawyer glanced at me, silent. The room was still. My hands shook. I was losing my daughter, and no one saw it happening. Then I heard a voice, small, steady, unmistakably hers. Your Honor, I brought a video from Daddy's phone. I think you should see it. Everything stopped. Heads turned. The bailiff looked confused. Ryan's face lost all color. Judge Kingston raised her eyebrows, clearly caught off guard. Chloe stood up, tablet in hand. She wasn't crying. She wasn't afraid. She looked stronger than I'd ever seen her. She walked forward, passing her father like he was just a stranger, and held the tablet out to the judge. I didn't even know she had it. Didn't know she recorded anything. But I knew in that moment, everything had just changed. The judge took the device. What is this? she asked. Chloe, calm and clear, said, "It's from last weekend. Daddy said those things when I was supposed to be asleep, but I wasn't. He was really mad. I thought if you didn't believe Mommy, maybe you'd believe him." My heart cracked open. My daughter had done what I couldn't, stood up, told the truth, and shifted the entire courtroom. That space, where I'd felt so small, suddenly belonged to her. Before all of this, the hearings, the cold chairs, the legal jargon, it was just Chloe and me. Our apartment wasn't big. 2 small bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and creaky wood floors that groaned after 10 at night. But Chloe called it our nest. Said her pink curtains made the room look like the inside of a cotton candy cloud. Most nights, she lay with her stuffed sloth, Pickles, and asked for 2 stories instead of 1. I always said yes. I worked as a freelance illustrator from home. It paid enough to keep us afloat. My mom, Darlene, lived nearby and helped during deadlines. She wasn't poetic, but she always showed up, dropping off casseroles, cleaning my bathroom, and hugging me with whispered words like, "You're doing better than you think, Emma." And for a while, I believed her. Chloe was bright, gentle, and far too observant for her age. She asked questions most adults weren't ready to answer. One night, she caught me crying in the kitchen. She didn't say anything, just wrapped her blanket around my shoulders and sat beside me. That's who she was. We started the truth jar right after the divorce. Anytime she had a scary or confusing question, she'd write it down and drop it in the jar. Each night, we'd read one together. Some were innocent. Why do feet smell? Others were painful. Will Daddy stop loving me if I stay with you? I never lied. I gave her the truth, always. Ryan didn't want truth. He wanted control. He agreed to joint custody on paper, but behind the scenes, he picked at everything. Criticized what she ate, complained if I arrived 2 minutes late. And after weekends with him, Chloe would return withdrawn, sometimes completely silent until Tuesday. I told the court, but Ryan knew how to perform. A former athlete turned sales rep, he knew how to charm. In public, he was all smiles. At home, he could snap over spilled juice or a lost phone charger. I kept records, emails, texts, voicemails. I had folders of him calling me unstable, using words no child should hear. But I never showed them to Chloe. I thought I was shielding her. I thought I was doing the right thing. But the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. And Chloe, my brave little girl, was the one who finally brought it into the light. After Chloe handed over the video, time moved strangely. The judge didn't press play right away. She just held the tablet in her hands, weighing it like she knew this wasn't just a device. It was a turning point. Meanwhile, Ryan sat stone-faced. His lawyer leaned in to whisper, but he didn't react. Chloe stood perfectly still, her sunflower dress a little too short now, hem brushing her knees, arms at her sides. She didn't fidget. She didn't look back. She waited. The judge finally tapped the screen. For a moment, only soft, ambient noise came through. Nighttime silence, a hum, the faint clatter of dishes. Then his voice erupted, harsh, loud, familiar. Not the voice he used in court, but the one I'd heard too many times behind closed doors. "You think you're so smart, huh? Try telling anyone. Go ahead. You'll end up in a foster home. And don't think your pathetic mother can save you." A chair scraped. Something clattered. Then Chloe's voice, small and frightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't talk back," he snapped. "You're lucky I even let you come over. If you say one word to her, I swear," the judge hit pause. The stillness in the room was suffocating. She stared at the screen, her face unreadable. Ryan's lawyer leaned over again, but the judge raised her hand slightly. quiet, commanding, absolute. "Where did this come from?" she asked. Chloe's voice didn't falter. He left his phone on the couch. I heard him yelling. I was scared, but I thought if someone heard it, maybe they'd believe me. And Mommy. My chest felt like it cracked wide open. My daughter had been terrified. And she made a plan. She followed through with more courage than most grown-ups I know. I wanted to run to her, hold her, tell her she should have never had to do any of this. But I stayed seated. This moment belonged to her. Ryan finally spoke, his voice strained and defensive. "Your Honor, that recording is completely out of context. I was disciplining her. She was misbehaving." "Enough," Judge Kingston said, not loud, but sharp as a blade. Ryan stopped. The judge looked at Chloe and said, "Thank you for being brave. You can go back to your seat." Chloe nodded and walked slowly back. The weight of it all finally began to show in her shoulders. My mom pulled her into her lap, arms wrapped tight, like she was trying to hold every piece of her together. The judge looked back at me. "Miss Walker, do you have anything else to add?" I finally found my voice. "No, Your Honor. I think my daughter said everything that mattered." The judge nodded, leaned back, closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them and said, "In light of this evidence, I'm calling for an immediate review of all custody arrangements. Until that is completed, full temporary custody will be granted to Miss Walker. Supervised visitation only for Mr. Harris. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Harris from the courtroom." Ryan stood, stunned. "You can't be serious." The bailiff stepped forward. "Sir?" He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He turned and walked out, his lawyer scrambling behind him. The courtroom emptied slowly. People moved quietly, eyes lingering on us. But we didn't move. Chloe stayed curled in my mother's lap. I sat beside them and took her hand. "You were so brave," I said. She didn't say anything at first, just nodded slightly. I could see it settling in, the reality, the cost, the release. She hadn't just told the truth. She had stood up to the person who had taught her to keep quiet. And in doing so, she changed everything. After Ryan was gone, the air shifted. Like someone cracked open a window in a room where we'd all been holding our breath. I could finally inhale. Not completely, but enough to feel human again. The judge left the bench without a word, but before she did, she looked at Chloe. And for the first time, her expression softened. Not pity, not surprise, something more like respect. I gathered our things, slowly. My hands trembled as I packed up Chloe's backpack. Her tablet rested quietly beside her on the bench. I reached for her hand. "Do you want to come with me?" I asked. She nodded and slid off my mom's lap. As we walked out of the courtroom, people watched us. Some looked away quickly, others didn't. One woman mouthed the word brave as we passed. Outside the courtroom doors, I knelt in front of Chloe. "Are you okay?" She shrugged, then finally whispered, "I didn't want to do it, but I had to." "I know," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm so proud of you. You shouldn't have had to carry that alone." She looked at the floor. I didn't know if they'd believe me. "They did," I said, "because you told the truth. And you were strong enough to stand up when no one else could." Her eyes met mine, glossy and unsure. "Does this mean I don't have to go back to Daddy's house?" I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight without crushing her. "You're safe. That's what matters." After the courtroom cleared, the court officers gave us new documents. The temporary custody agreement listed strict conditions. Ryan would only be allowed supervised visits, twice a month. in a monitored setting. No overnights, no weekends alone, no whispered threats. It was a start, not the end, but a beginning we desperately needed. That afternoon, we didn't go home. I couldn't bring Chloe back to our apartment, not yet. The silence in that space would be too loud, too full of echoes and memories that hadn't settled yet. Instead, we went to my mom's house. She made soup, even though it was warm outside. She always made soup when emotions were heavy, said it gave her something to stir when the rest of the world felt out of control. Chloe sat at the kitchen table drawing with crayons while I filled out more court paperwork on the couch. At one point, she walked over and handed me a drawing, 2 hands holding a heart. Beneath it, in her big, uneven handwriting, she'd written, "Truth is brave." I cried. Not the quiet, hidden kind. The real kind. The kind that escapes from the chest like steam from a kettle. Chloe didn't say anything. She just leaned against me, her small shoulder pressed into my side. We sat like that for a long time, still in our court clothes, still not quite ready to let the day go. That night, we pulled out the truth jar again. It had been sitting untouched on her shelf for weeks. I held it in my lap while she climbed into bed, hugging Pickles the sloth. "Do you want to go first?" I asked. She shook her head and pointed to the folded note on top. I opened it and read aloud. "What happens when the truth hurts people?" I looked up at her. "Did you write this?" She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt Daddy. I just didn't want to be scared anymore." I reached across the bed and took her hand. The truth can hurt sometimes, but silence hurts more. What you did today didn't hurt anyone. You protected yourself. You protected me. That's not wrong. She stared at the jar, then whispered, "I think we should keep doing this." "We will," I promised. "Every night." Later, after she fell asleep, I stood by the living room window. Outside, the streetlights flickered. Cars passed. Life moved on. But inside, everything had changed. Ryan no longer controlled the story. He no longer controlled Chloe's voice. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was losing her. I felt like I was meeting her again, for real. The final custody hearing was scheduled 4 weeks later. By then, the court-appointed counselor had finished his evaluation. His report was detailed and damning. He wrote about Ryan's need for control, his emotional volatility, and his inability to recognize Chloe's well-being. Ryan denied all of it, naturally. But the video Chloe had presented spoke louder than anything in his defense. The judge reviewed everything. The transcript of the hearing, the counselor's notes, the video, and Chloe's own words. On the day of the ruling, I sat quietly in court, holding my breath. Not out of fear this time, but out of hope. Judge Kingston's voice was firm and clear. Full legal and physical custody is granted to Miss Walker. Mr. Harris will have supervised visitation twice a month at a neutral facility under the supervision of trained professionals. It was final. Chloe wouldn't be alone with him again. Not until the court deemed it safe, if ever. No more unsupervised weekends. No more coming home with silent lips and glassy eyes. No more pretending everything was fine. As we left the courthouse, Chloe held my hand tightly. My mother walked beside us, scanning the sidewalk. Ryan didn't show up. He hadn't spoken to me since the first hearing. I was fine with that. Later that evening, we went to a diner Chloe loved, the one with red booths and animal-shaped pancakes. She sat across from me, legs swinging, stirring her chocolate milk with her straw. "Is it over now?" she asked. I didn't lie. "It's safer now," I said. "We're not done growing through this, but we're not afraid anymore." She nodded and smiled softly. "I'm glad I told." So am I said. In the weeks that followed, I found myself replaying the courtroom over and over. The way Ryan's face shifted when Chloe spoke. The way her words, so small and clear, cut through the entire performance. My daughter reminded me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a whisper that refuses to go unheard. I started therapy again. Not because I was falling apart, but because I finally had room to feel safe, to breathe, to unpack years of keeping it all in. I'd been surviving for so long, I forgot how to actually live. That would take time. But now, I had time. Chloe started drawing more. Her sketches changed. They used to be full of stormy skies and closed doors. Now she drew trees with roots, children holding hands, and hearts with beams of light shooting out. She even drew the truth jar and taped it to her bedroom wall. Every night, she reminded me to check it. One night, a few days after the ruling, I pulled a note from the truth jar. Chloe was already in bed, hugging pickles and waiting for me to read. I unfolded the paper. Do brave people still get scared? I smiled, sat on the edge of her bed, and looked into her curious eyes. Yes, I said softly. They just don't let fear write the ending. She reached for my hand, nodding slowly, like she was still figuring out what bravery really meant. The next night, there was another note. Can kids protect grown-ups too? I looked at her, my heart swelling with something I couldn't name. You did, I said. You protected both of us. Since the final hearing, our life had taken on a new rhythm. Not perfect, but lighter. Chloe slept better. She smiled more. She asked questions like a child should, about rainbows and whales and why people snore. Her drawings stayed bright. Her shoulders seemed a little less heavy. I, on the other hand, was still relearning how to be okay. Years of walking on eggshells had trained my body to stay tense. I'd flinch at sudden noises. I'd brace myself when the phone rang. I still checked the locks twice before bed, but those habits were slowly loosening their grip. I spent more time with my mom. Sometimes she'd just show up with groceries or lasagna or an old photo album, pretending it was all casual, but I knew she was watching me closely, quietly making sure I was healing. She didn't say much, but she didn't have to. Her presence was enough. Chloe started a new habit, writing small truths and taping them on the fridge. Truth doesn't whisper. Scared doesn't mean weak. Mommy is my home. I kept every one of them. She asked to invite her best friend over for a sleepover one weekend, the first since everything changed. I said yes. I bought popcorn and silly face masks and let them build a pillow fort in the living room. At one point, I heard her laugh. Really laugh. That kind of bubbly, uncontrollable joy that had felt missing for too long. It echoed through the apartment, and I just sat there, listening, tears in my eyes, grateful. One afternoon, we walked past the courthouse on the way to the library. Chloe slowed down and stared up at the stone building. That's where I told the truth, she said. Yes, I replied, and the truth listened. She didn't say anything else, just reached for my hand. I tell this story now, not because it's easy to relive, but because I know there's someone out there still in it. A woman sitting quietly, wondering if she's the only one. Wondering if anyone will ever believe her. Wondering if the truth is enough. This story is for her. It's also for the people who stand beside someone in the storm. The moms who show up with soup. The children who carry courage in their backpacks. The friends who don't ask questions, but stay close anyway. Truth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes in small voices, shaking hands, and crayon drawings taped to bedroom walls. Sometimes it comes from a child who sees what adults refuse to. And sometimes it's the quietest people who carry the loudest light. One evening, Chloe asked if we could make the truth jar more official. What do you mean? I asked. Like, paint it, make it pretty, so we never forget what it's for. So we did. We picked out purple glitter paint and gold stickers. We wrote "Truth is Brave" across the lid in permanent marker. Chloe added a heart and a lightning bolt. That night, she put in a new note. Can we be happy again? I didn't answer right away. I just held her, thinking about all we'd survived, all we still had to learn. Then I said, we already are. Because happiness wasn't something we were chasing anymore. It was something we were building, one honest day at a time. Weeks passed after the final hearing, and for the first time in years, our lives started to feel ours. Ryan didn't call. He didn't show up. He followed the court's strict visitation orders, supervised twice a month. No overnights, no more closed-door weekends. Chloe never had to be alone with him again. We began to breathe easier. One afternoon, Chloe asked to go to the diner she loved, the one with the red booths and pancakes shaped like animals. She sat across from me, stirring her chocolate milk with the straw. Is it over now? She asked, her voice small. I didn't lie. It's safer now, I said. We're still healing, but we're not afraid anymore. She nodded slowly. I'm glad I told. So am I. That night, I found a new note in the truth jar. In her big, careful letters, Chloe had written, Do brave people still get scared? I smiled, sat on the edge of her bed, and answered, Yes. They just don't let fear write the ending. Her hand found mine under the blanket. A few nights later, another note appeared. Can kids protect grown-ups too? I looked at her, heart full. You did, I said. You protected us both. She smiled, then turned over and went to sleep. In the weeks that followed, her drawings changed. She used to draw stormy skies and empty houses. Now they showed trees, hands holding hearts, and windows filled with light. One morning, she taped a picture of the truth jar above her bed, decorated with glitter and gold stars. On it, she'd written, Truth is brave. I kept every drawing, every note, every quiet moment where she showed me what strength really looked like. I began therapy again, not because I was falling apart, but because, for the first time, I had space to process what I'd survived. The noise was quiet now. I could think. I could breathe. One day, walking home from the store, Chloe looked up at me. Do you think other kids have to do what I did? I paused. I hope not, but maybe if they hear your story, they'll feel less alone. She thought about that. Then maybe we should tell it. So we are. We're telling it for the mothers afraid no one will believe them. For the kids who feel like they have to stay silent. For the people who think they're powerless but aren't. Because the truth may not roar, but it doesn't have to. Sometimes it just needs someone small, brave, and 7 years old to carry it forward. Stay away from my children, you tattooed freak. Those cruel words echoed daily in the small town of Clearfield, shadowing Daniel Carter wherever he went. No one seemed to see the decorated Marine beneath the ink, just his tattoos. But everything changed the day an 8-year-old girl was trapped by fire, and Daniel ran into the flames. Daniel Carter never expected to return to Clearfield. After 12 years in the Marines, including 3 grueling tours in Afghanistan, the hometown baseball star had become someone unrecognizable to the town that once cheered for him. His tattoos, covering his arms, back, and neck, told stories Clearfield refused to hear. Every trip to Jensen's grocery meant watching parents subtly steer their children away. Every morning at Millie's Cafe meant taking his seat in silence while the conversations around him stalled or ended altogether. Daniel took his coffee black, left the exact change, and spoke only when absolutely necessary. "We do not need someone like that coaching our youth," Mayor Bradford had declared when Daniel applied to coach the town's Little League team. The rejection stung more than Daniel let on. Baseball had once been his entire life. The field behind Clearfield Elementary was where his father had taught him to throw a fastball before cancer took him at 42. The official letter cited a desire to find a candidate whose values better reflect Clearfield. Daniel folded the paper carefully and placed it in a drawer, joining a stack of rejections. A job at the high school as a security officer, a position on the county maintenance team, a teaching role at the community college. Each rejection sent the same unspoken message. Your service was good enough for the military, but your appearance is not good enough for us. There was one exception. Mrs. Langston, the 80-year-old widow next door, whose husband had died in Korea, often left pies on his doorstep. Her notes always ended the same way. "Thank you for your service, young man." But even that kindness could not erase the town's collective judgment. Daniel worked remotely as an IT specialist, a job that let him avoid interaction. But the nights were harder. In his grandmother's old house, the silence was so heavy it drove him out. Often he would drive 40 minutes to Veterans Post 221 in the next county, a place where others understood the weight of combat, the hypervigilance, the nightmares. On his back, Daniel carried a large tattooed memorial. 4 names: Baker, Hernandez, Miller, and Rhodes, his fallen squad members. Underneath their names, the words read, "Until Valhalla." No one in Clearfield had ever asked what it meant. No one wanted to know. Then came the fire. Sirens screamed through the quiet afternoon. Daniel's instincts kicked in before thought. Emergency signals meant someone was in danger. He sprinted toward the column of black smoke rising just blocks away. When he arrived at the scene, flames had already engulfed the first floor of the Parker family home. Clearfield's volunteer fire department was still struggling to connect hoses. Emily Parker fought against Fire Chief Lawson's hold. "My daughter is upstairs," she screamed, voice raw. "She is only 8. "Ma'am, we cannot go in yet," Lawson said, voice tight. "The structure is unstable." Daniel pushed through the crowd. "Which room?" he demanded. Emily hesitated. Recognition flickered in her fear. The tattooed man no one wanted around their children. But desperation won. "Second floor, right side." "Pink curtains," she choked out. Daniel nodded, wrapped his shirt around his face, and bolted toward the house. "Carter, stop!" Lawson shouted. But Daniel was already inside. Heat hit like a wave. Smoke seared his throat and eyes. Dropping low, he crawled under the worst of it, heading for the stairs. Flames licked up the railing. He took the steps 3 at a time. Embers burned his arms and shoulders, but he pressed on. "Lena," he called, voice muffled. A faint cough answered from the far hallway. He found her under a bed, curled tightly, frozen with fear. "I've got you," he said, pulling her close. "Hold on and do not let go." She pressed her face into his chest. The way back was worse. Part of the staircase had collapsed. Daniel leapt the gap, clutching Lena to him. Pain tore through his back as debris struck him. But the mission was clear. Get the child out. Bursting through the front door, his shirt was half burned away, revealing the full tapestry of ink across his body. Blisters had formed, burns now mixing with the tattoos. And for a moment, Clearfield saw him. Saw all of him. Emily rushed to him, sobbing as she took her daughter. Paramedics tended to both of them. Daniel waved off offers to ride to the hospital. Second-degree burns on the back and shoulders, one medic murmured. "I'm fine," Daniel insisted. He had endured worse. Chief Lawson approached, jaw tight. That was either brave or foolish. She needed help, Daniel said simply. As the ambulance pulled away, Daniel limped home. People stared, whispered, "Did you see his back?" He ran in without thinking. What are those names tattooed there? But for once, the whispers were tinged with something besides suspicion. Respect, maybe, gratitude. And in less than a day, whispers would be the least of Clearfield's surprises. The next morning, the Clearfield Gazette featured Daniel on the front page. The headline read, "Local Veteran Saves Child from House Fire." Beneath it, a cell phone photo captured the moment Daniel emerged from the flames, carrying Lena Parker. For once, the article didn't lead with tattooed veteran. Instead, it called him a decorated Marine whose combat experience had prepared him for a heroic rescue. Daniel barely noticed the paper. He spent the morning applying burn cream, jaw clenched against the pain. He had just poured a cup of coffee when he heard it. The unmistakable rumble of motorcycles. Dozens, growing louder. Through the front window, Daniel saw them. Riders turning onto his street, each wearing a leather vest marked with military insignias. Tattooed veterans, inked arms, necks, and hands visible as they parked. Daniel stopped counting at 50. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Some stepped onto porches. A tall man with iron gray hair and a posture that screamed officer stepped up to Daniel's door. Before he could knock, Daniel opened it. "Sergeant Carter?" the man said, smiling faintly. "Colonel Matthew Dalton. Retired. 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines." Daniel snapped to attention. "Yes, sir." "At ease, Marine. This isn't a drill." "Then what is it?" Daniel asked, watching as more veterans filled the street. "Word travels fast," Dalton explained. "We heard what you did, and we've heard how this town's treated one of our own. Every one of us here has served. Every one of us bears ink that tells a story, and we are done letting civilians judge what they don't understand." A younger man approached, prosthetic leg visible. "Sir, local post confirms they're en route. ETA 30 minutes. "I don't want trouble," Daniel said quietly. "I'm just trying to live in peace." "No trouble," Dalton said. "But it's time Clearfield learned what this ink means." He tapped Daniel's chest, right over the memorial tattoo. "Those names, they're your brothers, aren't they?" Daniel nodded. Before he could speak, more vehicles arrived, pickup trucks, SUVs with vet plates. A man in his 40s stepped forward. "Jackson Lee, VFW commander from Ridgefield. We've been trying to get you to join for 2 years." "No Clearfield post," Daniel said flatly. "Maybe there should be," Lee replied. "Plenty of veterans here, all hiding. That ends today." "What are you planning?" Daniel asked. Dalton's smile turned grim. "Education, the kind that sticks." By noon, Clearfield Park had transformed. Tents and booths lined the walkways. Flags representing each military branch waved in the breeze. There were resource tables, VA representatives, and food stands. But the centerpiece, the one that froze townspeople mid-step, was the stories behind our ink exhibit. Veterans stood ready beside banners and displays, explaining the meanings behind their tattoos, memorials, unit insignias, dates, coordinates. Every piece etched into skin told a story. Dalton had somehow secured city permits or made them irrelevant with sheer presence. Mayor Bradford arrived late, declaring the event an official Veterans Appreciation Day, but he kept his distance from the more heavily tattooed attendees. "Convenient timing," Daniel muttered. Dalton chuckled. "Nothing like a crowd to make a politician sweat." Fire Chief Lawson and the Parker family soon arrived. Lena spotted Daniel instantly. "Mr. Carter," she yelled, sprinting over to hug him. "The doctor says I'm okay. Just a little smoke." Daniel knelt, grimacing as his healing back twinged. "That's good news, kiddo. Mom says you're a real hero, like in the movies. Your mom's too kind. Lena stared at his arm. Your tattoos are cool. I like the eagle. And the names on your back, those your friends? The directness caught Daniel off guard. Yes, he said softly. My friends. They didn't make it home. So you carry them with you? Always? Exactly. He hadn't noticed the small crowd forming around them. One face stood out. Coach Taylor, the man who'd gotten the Little League job. His expression was sheepish. I didn't know, Taylor said, what the tattoos meant. You never asked, Daniel replied, not harshly. That afternoon, the park filled. Residents once wary now asked questions, especially the kids. Daniel found himself explaining the Marine emblem, the map of Helmand Province, the autism ribbon for his younger brother. Wait, you have a brother with autism? Asked Mrs. Cooper, who had once told him to stay away from her son at the grocery store. Yes, ma'am. He lives in Columbus with our aunt. That's why I recognized the signs in your son last year. Her eyes welled. I'm so sorry. I just assumed. That's the problem with assumptions, Daniel said. They leave no room for truth. As the sun began to set, Colonel Dalton called for the crowd's attention. The veterans gathered behind him, forming a united line, their presence a silent testament to the service they had given and the judgment they had faced. Today, you've seen the stories behind our ink, Dalton said, his voice calm but forceful. These tattoos honor those we lost, mark where we've been, and remind us of promises we made and kept. But there's one more story you all need to hear. He gestured to Daniel. This man is more than a decorated Marine or a local hero. Daniel Carter is a recipient of the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star for valor. Under heavy enemy fire, he carried 3 wounded Marines to safety. His back bears the names of 4 who didn't make it. The crowd was silent. Many stared at Daniel with wide eyes. Daniel stepped forward, uneasy but steady. Those tattoos you've judged for years? He said. They aren't decoration. They're memorials. Each name inked on me is someone I trained with, fought beside, and lost. Mayor Bradford shifted uncomfortably, then stepped up to the microphone. On behalf of Clearfield, I want to thank Sergeant Carter and every veteran here today. We've clearly made mistakes in how we treat our returning heroes. Colonel Dalton stepped in before Daniel could respond. We aren't here for apologies, Mayor. We're here because saying thank you for your service means nothing if you turn your back on those same people at home. As dusk settled, the veterans began a candlelit ceremony. One by one, each veteran with a memorial tattoo stepped up, reading the names they carried. For every name, a candle was lit and placed along a temporary wall. When it was Daniel's turn, he didn't waver. Lance Corporal Michael Baker, Sergeant Luis Hernandez, Corporal Adam Miller, Lance Corporal Joel Rhodes. October 14th, 2009. Helmand Province. Our vehicle hit an IED. I was the only survivor. His voice did not break, but many in the crowd wiped away tears. After the ceremony, Emily Parker approached with Lena. We're having a small gathering next weekend, she said. Just neighbors and friends. A thank you. We'd love for you to come. I'll be there, Daniel promised. As he walked home, flanked by Colonel Dalton and several veterans who had stayed behind, Daniel noticed porch lights on, neighbors nodding greetings, a few even offering quiet thank yous. They'll forget, Daniel said to Dalton. Give it a month. It'll go back to the way it was. Not this time, Dalton replied. We're not all leaving. There are over 20 veterans within 30 miles who are tired of hiding. We're founding a VFW post here, and we want you to lead it. One day won't undo years, Daniel said. No, Dalton agreed. But it's a start, and we'll be back every Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July. until this town remembers not to forget us. 6 months later, Clearfield had changed. Some shifts were subtle, others more visible. The newly chartered VFW Post 3182 met twice a month in the community center. Daniel Carter was its quartermaster. Each meeting welcomed townsfolk, an open invitation to understand more about military life and the meanings behind veterans' tattoos. Mayor Bradford, now campaigning for re-election, had made veteran outreach a pillar of his platform. The town's youth baseball program added a position for Daniel, focusing on kids with special needs, like his younger brother. On a cool spring morning, Daniel walked into Jensen's grocery. People nodded, spoke. Mr. Jensen himself poured a fresh cup of coffee. "Morning. Sergeant Carter, coffee's fresh." "Thanks," Daniel said, still getting used to the shift. As he walked the aisles, a young man stocking shelves caught his attention. Tattoos peeked from under rolled sleeves. Military, subtle, but meaningful. "Afghanistan or Iraq?" Daniel asked. The man looked up. "Afghanistan, 2017 to 2019. "You?" "Earlier war," Daniel said, offering a hand. "Daniel Carter, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. James Ellis, 10th Mountain Division." They shook hands. Veterans connecting in a way few understood. "Heard this town's different now," Ellis said. "Getting there," Daniel replied. A small voice interrupted. "Coach Daniel." Lena ran down the aisle, followed by her mother. "Mom says I can join your team? Are you still teaching us about the ribbon tattoo?" "That's the plan," Daniel said, smiling at Emily. "We're having a cookout this weekend," she said. "Just neighbors and friends. You should come." "You too, James." Outside the store, James gave Daniel a questioning look. "That happen a lot now?" "More than it used to. The fire changed minds. So did the veterans showing up." "What about the tattoos?" "People still look," Daniel said, "but now they ask questions instead of turning away." Later that day, as Daniel coached his team of special needs kids, he spotted Mayor Bradford in the bleachers. After practice, the mayor approached. "Got a minute? What can I do for you?" "Town council approved a permanent veterans memorial. We'd like your input." As VFW rep, he handed Daniel a folder of designs. Daniel flipped through them. "Looks good. I'll bring it to our next meeting." "There's more," Bradford said, rolling up his sleeve to reveal a new tattoo. "Military insignia. My dad served in Vietnam. Never talked about it. I found his medals after he passed. Wanted to honor him. Your friend Ellis did the work." Daniel studied the ink. Simple, respectful. "Good work," he said. "I get it now," Bradford said. "The ink. It's about remembering." "Among other things," Daniel replied. "On Memorial Day, Clearfield dedicated its permanent monument in the town park. Veterans came from across the state. The polished granite bore the names of those who had served and those who hadn't come home." Daniel stood at the podium. Familiar faces watched. Civilians and veterans side by side. "A year ago," he said, "I was invisible here. My tattoos made me a stranger in my hometown." He placed a hand on the memorial. We judged each other in silence. Me, assuming you wouldn't understand. You, assuming I had nothing worth knowing. But we were wrong. These names carved in stone, they deserve more than our silence. And the stories inked on our skin deserve to be seen, to be heard. Not because they make us heroes, but because they make us human. The crowd was still. Then applause rippled through them. Afterward, Lena found Daniel. "I told Mom I want a tattoo like yours someday. Not the big ones, maybe just the ribbon." "That's a talk for many years from now," Daniel said gently. She tapped her chest. "Mom says the most important things are here, but sometimes putting them on the outside helps others understand. Your mom's right." As he walked home that evening, Daniel passed neighbors who now greeted him by name. Some stopped to chat. Others waved from porches. His phone buzzed. Message from Colonel Dalton. 4 more veterans moving to your area next month. Clearfield is becoming the example. Good work, Marine. Daniel smiled. That evening, at the VFW meeting, they held another story circle. More tattoos, more stories, more understanding. In a world quick to judge, Clearfield had learned a lesson. Written in ink, sealed by fire. That courage comes in many forms. That heroes are often overlooked, and that the deepest stories can be found on the skin of those we once feared to see.